Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. So we're going to have our next Q&A, which I've been looking forward to. We've got 5 questions in all from What's That Smell? Let It End, Let It Ascend, and Jane the Jubilant. So I say 5 questions in all, I think. One in particular gives me a lot of scope to give you a lot of information. The one I'm going to start with is Let It End, Let It Ascend's question. Thank you very much for providing it, by the way. My favourite Star Wars character. Now, for this, we go on a journey back to 1977, where it all began. And I'm going to play you the opening crawl for a good reason, and I'll tell you afterwards. Let's have a look. So this is the original opening crawl. It all started a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Alexa, spare him off. It is a period of civil war. Rebel spaceships striking from a hidden base have won their first victory against the evil galactic empire. During the battle, rebel spies managed to steal secret plans to the Empire's ultimate weapon, the Death Star, an armored space station with enough power to destroy an entire planet. Pursued by the Empire's sinister agents, Princess Leia races home aboard her starship, custodian of the stolen plans that can save her people and restore freedom to the galaxy. Now, the reason I wanted to play that first of all Alexa, spare him on. The reason I wanted to play that was in 1977, I sat in a cinema with my brother and my mother, and she read that same crawl to us because we obviously were very young then. So it brings back a nice vibe, a nice memory for me. We were all sat in the cinema. My mum wasn't particularly well, fond's the wrong word. She wasn't a fan of Star Wars, but she knew we might be. It was something different, something unusual from the creative mind of George Lucas, and she thought it would be fun to watch it because nobody knew what was going to happen. Nobody had seen anything like this before, had they? It was a completely new story from the genius of Mr. Lucas. For that reason, I wanted to start with it because the subscriber, and thank you again for the question, who actually posed it, the question, admitted that he or she, I'm not sure if you're who you are. Uh, they admitted to me that they weren't a fan as such. But respect for you providing me with that question. So thank you for that. That's much appreciated. Even though you're not a fan, you were decent enough and respectful enough to provide me with that. So thank you. I much appreciated that. Who knows? You might be a fan after this. Anyway, yeah. So that brings back a nice moment. Now I'm going to reveal who my favourite character is. Before I do, though, He has been in every episode from the beginning to the end. Every episode. That's probably given it away, but I'm going to play you the opening scene, and I'll pause it, and we'll talk a bit more about him. Okay, Alexa, spare him off. So this is the opening scene. You wouldn't believe how they did some of these special effects. It's absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. These are all miniatures, by the way. All these are miniatures. A lot of them are filmed in Pinewood Studios. And you wouldn't believe how they filmed some of them either. Absolutely incredible. So that's Princess Leia's ship in front there. Just been hit. And here's the chap himself. I'll pause it there. There you are. C3PO. Alexa, spare him on. So, yeah, C3PO, played by Anthony Daniels inside that costume. And boy, did it give George Lucas problems. Oh boy, it did. It did. Now, Anthony Daniels is a mime artist. That's not the total reason why he got the part, but part of it. Another reason he got the part was he was set. It was a Ralph McQuarrie painting of a robot in a desert landscape, and it looked so innocent. It had his hand stretched out like this, saying, "Come, be with me, be with me." It was a Ralph McQuarrie painting. I'm not going to show it because I'll probably get a slam with copyright. Um, so yeah, if you want to Google it, Ralph McQuarrie painted it. It was a representation of um, what George Lucas wanted Star Wars to look like, or the Star Wars to look like. So yeah, so it's he made a connection. He made a connection, and can anyone remember who who said the first in the script? Who said the first line? Shall I tell you the answer? It was Anthony Daniels. It goes something like this. Well, actually, if I play this, it's this scene. This is the first time you see him, and you've got Kenny Baker in R2D2 in the robot there. There's, did you hear that? They've shut down the main reactor. We'll be destroyed for sure. This is madness, or something like that. But that's not a bad impression, I don't think. To which 3PO, sorry, R2D2 replies, or something like that. I'll just play you the scene anyway because it's fun. There we are. And it's also the first appearance of Darth Vader, played by Dave Prowse. There we are. Those were the lines. Did you hear that? They've shut down the main reactor. We'll be destroyed for sure. This is madness. That costume he's wearing didn't go well at all. Didn't go well. If you read the autobiography George Lucas wrote about about his filming career, especially in Tunisia, um, there's bits and pieces in there about 3PO, which I'll come on to in one of the next questions. But this one's about Anthony Daniels. So he's a mime artist. So this is the entrance of Darth Vader, obviously. The the escape pod. The two droids end up, R2 and C3, they end up on Tatooine. And Tatooine is filmed in Tunisia back in it's actually 1975, 45, and 1976. Some of the effects were done at Pinewood Studios, but a lot of the outdoor effects. There he is. There he is again in his gold costume. How he doesn't get shot in this scene, I'll never know. Look how he avoids all the blast. Or how he doesn't get shot there, I never know. Never know. Anyway, yeah. So Anthony Daniels. We also saw him. My nephew and myself went to the arena at Liverpool on the Docklands there for Star Wars in concert. Star Wars in concert was it was the Liverpool Philharmonic Orchestra, and they were playing from start to finish what they were going through the film, and the host was none other than Anthony Daniels. So we saw him in real life as well, and that is why he's my favourite character. He's been in every one from the start to the finish, every single one. He, I mean, his lines. Some of his lines are funny, some not so funny, some sarcastic. But yeah, so Tony Daniels has appeared in every episode. The only character, I think, if memory serves, to appear in every episode. He's a nice chap. As I say, we saw him in real life. Really nice person. Very softly spoken, but a brilliant actor. Brilliant actor. And if you ever watched Star Wars Weekends, he was sort of co-host, if you will, in some of those. So yeah, Tony Daniels, C3PO, my favorite character, because he the funny thing was when he was doing going over his lines, if he was messing his lines up, because he couldn't see where he was going a lot of the time, so he kept falling over. And it's funny, George Lucas kept saying to him, "Now, want to see more expression from you, more expression," and he did that in a similar fashion to the way Peter Mayhew did it with Chewbacca. It was all about how you hold your head, and as he was a mime artist, it was perfect because he could look happy without having to alter his face at all. I mean, it was great. It was great. And you may remember, I think it was in Attack of the Clones when he first appeared with Anakin Skywalker, young Anakin Skywalker, or was it the Phantom Menace? I think it was the Phantom Menace. When when Anakin was building him, so you could see all his wires from head to toe. He hadn't been finished, but yeah, he was in every episode. And yeah, he's just the actor himself who plays him is a real nice person. He's funny, and that is why he's my favorite character. I have a lot of affection for him. He take if you take those two droids out of the Star Wars franchise, then it wouldn't work. It wouldn't work for me anyway. You'd lose you'd lose a lot of the magic. So yeah, that's the first question. Thank you very much again for providing that. Let it end, let it descend, which is an interesting handle, I must say. which will move us smartly on to my next question, which is going to, if is that if in fact there's a lot of information here. Jane the Jubilant has sent in. Thank you for your question, by the way, Jane. Appreciate it. Has sent in time to name your favourite books, films, and music, and we'll get onto that in just a moment. Be right back. R2D2 refused to work. It wasn't stubbornness on the part of the droid, a trait that would endear the character to millions of Star Wars fans around the world. Oh, hello. Didn't see you there. Yeah. Just reading one of my favourite books, or starting it anyway. Yeah, you might have seen it. It's George Lucas, A Life, and Lucas on the front. Anthony Daniels again. Now that picture, that's where Luke Skywalker's dwelling was, played by Mark Hamill. That's in Tunisia, and this is a superb book. Um, it takes you way back to March 19. What does it say? 1976, March 1976. I was just reading a couple of lines there from the prologue, Out of Control. Um, so yeah, this is. I'll just read you what it says on the back here. On May 25th, 1977, a problem plagued budget-straining independent science fiction film opened in just a small number of cinemas. Conceived, written, and directed by a little-known filmmaker named George Lucas, the movie originally called The Star Wars, quickly drew queues around the block, bursting box office records and ushering in a new way for movies to be made, marketed, and merchandised. It is now one of the most adored and successful movie franchises of all time. And yeah, it is. Um, this was written by the bestseller Brian J. Jones. Shout out to Brian. Um, he also wrote the author of the international bestseller Jim Henson about the Muppets, how he created them. But this book takes you right the way through all the issues that they had along the way, filming everything. Tells you about how George Lucas was that stressed that he had to check himself in because he had hypertension. He was that stressed about the filming. He was way behind, way off budget. And in the end, he wasn't happy with any of the shots. He had to get his wife, who was an editor, to help him finish the film. It was that bad. But hey, you know, when they finished I mean, he had to build all his own cameras. Um, they, they imagined some of the best special effects that you'll ever see ever. And if it wasn't for the likes of George Lucas, and if it wasn't for well, he a lot of it he was big pal still is with Steven Spielberg as well. So if it wasn't for Industrial Light and Magic, which is his, you know, the ranch where a lot of his meetings took place. If it wasn't for him, hello, well, we have a visitor. If it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have half the films we have today, especially Pixar. Um, but George Lucas Alive, it tells you all about about how how Star Wars was created, the problems that they ran into, including sandstorms in Tunisia. Um, Nothing worked. Nothing worked. None of the shots were liked by George. He had to go back and redo a lot of them himself because a lot of the effects just didn't work. Um, but eventually, it's a there's that famous footage, isn't there, from the Chinese theatre? Queues around the block to go and see it. And everyone loved it, and of course, everyone had their, three PO and R2 had their imprints in the cement, didn't they? So you can, if you walk down the I forget what you call it. It's just outside the Chinese theatre. There's a walk of fame, all the different stars, and 3PO and R2's footprints are there. But this, if you want to know, basically, if you want to know how to make a film, that one, that's the one. How to make a film on a very, very low budget. Brilliant book, really, really, really good book. One of my favourites. Um, and we'll do it. We'll go from Mr. Lucas to a slightly different genre. So I'll see you in a sec. If I can turn this off for once with my remote. Part 1. Anatomy of a Plot. Chapter 1. It is cold at 6:40 in the morning of a March day in Paris, and seems even colder when a man is about to be executed by firing squad. At the hour on the 11th of March 1963, in the main courtyard of the Fort d'Ivry, a French Air Force colonel stood before a stake driven into the chilly gravel as his hands were bound behind the post, and stared slowly, diminishing disbelief at the squad of soldiers facing him 20 meters away. A foot scuffed the grit, a tiny release from tension, as the blindfold was wrapped around the eyes of Lieutenant Colonel Jean-Marie Bastien-Thierry, blotting out the light for the last time. The mumbling of the priest was a helpless counterpoint to the crackling of 20 rifle bolts as the soldiers charged and cocked their carbines. Beyond the walls, a barely truck led for the passage as some smaller vehicles crossed its path towards the center of the city. The dying sound died away. Take your aim! Order from the in charge of the squad, the officer in charge. The crack of rifle fire when it came no ripple on the surface of the waking city, other than to send a flutter of pigeons skywards for a few moments. The death of the officer leading the gang of secret army organization killers who had sought to shoot the President of France was to have been an end to further attempts on the President's life. By a quirk of fate, it marked a beginning, and to explain why it must be first necessary to explain why a riddled body came to hang its ropes in the courtyard of the military prison outside Paris on that March morning. End of chapter 1. This, of course, is the Day of the Jackal, one of the most celebrated thrillers ever written. The Day of the Jackal is an electrifying story of an anonymous Englishman who, in the spring of 1963, was hired by Colonel Mark Rodin, operations chief of OAS, to assassinate General de Gaulle. It's by Frederick Forsyth is the author. It's in a class of its own, unputdownable, according to the Sunday Times. Mr. Forsyth is clever, very clever, and immensely entertaining. The Daily Telegraph. I was spellbound, riveted by the chilling story. The Guardian. The reason I like this book is it actually happened. The film stars Edward Fox as the Jackal. As thrillers go, it is superb. I take my leave now and move on to my next genre. I will speak to you shortly. So, from this, by the way, a brilliant, brilliant book, and it happened. It actually happened. From that to this. So, this is another one of my favourites. Why does E equal mc squared? Now, you'll be familiar with Albert Einstein, of course. His famous equation, energy equals mass times speed of light squared. But what does it all mean? No one really knows. People have put forward theories of their own. People have suggested things. No one really knows. Do you know? Are you familiar with E equals mc squared? This book is it was interesting. It was shortlisted for the Royal Society Prize for Science back in 2010, and Professor Brian Cox, which I'm sure you will have heard of, and Jeff Forshaw. And he put an interesting comment at the bottom. It's down there. And why should we care? Why should we care? Because we love science and we love Albert Einstein. And it's that thing. Why, it's like when Sir Isaac Newton sat under the tree and an apple fell on his head and he discovered gravity. He discovered gravity. It says Cox and Forshaw have blazed a clear trail into forbidding territory, from the mathematical structure of space-time all the way to atom bombs, astrophysics, and the origin of man. So Brian Cox is now getting involved in, or he is involved now in that project in the CERN in Switzerland, isn't he? With the large hadron collider, trying to recreate what happened at that moment of the Big Bang. I mean, people have joked about it. There's even the famous misprint, isn't there? you may or may not be aware of it, but that it was once misprinted as the large hard-on colluder or something like that. It was really funny. So I'll just read you the first sort of paragraph. This is from the New Scientist. Um, to get at the origins of E equal mc squared, the poster child for Einstein's special theory of relativity, Cox and Forshaw must delve into deep principles of science and wield the gold deal of mathematics. They do it well. They have blazed a clear trail into forbidding territory. Many authors have tried to explain the equation's origins with mixed results. It's hard to think of two authors more qualified for the job than Professor Brian Cox and Jeff Forshaw. They do a grand job of answering the question in the book's title and are trying it to, tying it to the cutting edge of 21st century physics. And yeah, so the book, I mean, there's the contents there. The one interesting factor for me is in chapter 17, it talks about the speed of light. How fast is the speed of light? I'll just read you the first couple of sentences. Michael Faraday, the son of a Yorkshire blacksmith, was born in South London in 1791. He was self-educated, leaving school at 14 to become an apprentice bookbinder. Michael Faraday. He engineered his own lucky break into the world of professional science after attending a lecture in London by the Cornish scientist Sir Humphrey Davy in 1811. And two very famous people who if you have done history in science, you'll know who they are. Faraday sent the notes he had taken at the lecture to Davy, who was so impressed by Faraday's diligent transcription that he appointed him his scientific assistant. Faraday went on to become a giant 19th century science, widely acknowledged. Wildly. Should be wildly, actually. No, widely, I beg your pardon. Davy is quoted as saying that Faraday was the greatest scientific discovery. That's a compliment and a half, that is. That's as near as you can get to being perfect. As 21st century scientists, it is easy to look back at the early 19th century with envious eyes. Faraday didn't need to collaborate with 10,000 other scientists and engineers at CERN to launch a double-decker bus-sized space telescope into high Earth orbit to make profound discoveries. So they talk about CERN already in there, you see. Right. And can anyone out there actually tell me what the speed of light is? I know, but answers on a postcard, please. That sounds like Blue Peter. Yeah. If anyone can tell me what the speed of light is, I'll be very happy to hear it. I know what it is, but I want you to tell me first. Okay. Yeah. So why does E equal mc squared? A brilliant read if you like this sort of thing, which I do. I like new discoveries, and I love this book. And Professor Brian Cox is, I mean, he's from Manchester. He's so laid back. He appeared on QI and stole the show basically. He really did. Have you ever watched the episode of QI with he was on there. Anyway, those are three of my favourite books. I'm going to move on to a completely different area now in this Q&A as we continue, and we're going to look at some of my favourite films, which is probably one of my favourite subjects. So, take a look at this. Hi, future Richard here. Sorry to pause the action, but something's come up, so I'm going to have to halt the films for now. That's all going to be coming up in part 2 of the Q&A. Hope you enjoyed my look at my favourite books. Maybe some of them are your favourite books as well. Please let me know in the comments. Hope you're enjoying this Q&A so far. I'll be back soon with favourite films and music, and somewhere along the line there, believe it or not, there are things that I don't like about Disney. Would you believe it? But there are. Anyhow, look forward to that. So I'll see you for part 2 of the Q&A in a bit.